everybody, and welcome to our first live broadcast of this month of February. And I am pleased, very pleased, I must say, to be joined by Jonathan Dykes, who is no stranger to our industry. But today I'll be talking to Jonathan about something which he holds very close to his heart, and it is something that we at Schools and Agents support fully: green standard schools. Jonathan, welcome. And how
Thank
are
you.
you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Very well indeed.
Good, good, good. So, Jonathan, I remember coming across green standard schools and thinking to myself, what a great idea. And then I remember connecting it with you and realizing that you were the person behind all of this. Where did the idea come from, and how did you decide to kickstart this project?
Okay, well, yeah, I first started trying to do something about the sustainability of a school that I was working with in Barcelona, in Spain, back in about 2007. I thought it was time that we tried to, take this whole issue more seriously, lessen our impact on the environment. And then I also thought it would be good if we took it a further step and tried to get some sort of accreditation for being an environmentally friendly organization. And at the time, I looked around and thought, okay, well, what organizations offer this sort of accreditation? There weren't that many. But in the end, we decided we would go with the European Union's Eco-Management Audit Scheme, which on paper looked really interesting. And in fact, it was really interesting to get involved with. But it was rather expensive to operate, and it was also very clear that it hadn't been designed for the sort of small service company that we were operating. It was basically designed for large manufacturing companies that were leaking chemicals out of their back door. So fast forward then to about, was it 2019, and it suddenly occurred to me that in fact the sensible approach would be to design a new accreditation system specifically for the language teaching industry. And having worked with these people from the European Union, we'd learned quite a lot and had some clues about which way to go. And then I talked to some colleagues about this idea of starting something new. We got additional technical expertise from a woman who was working with us in Belfast. And then we put the whole thing together and eventually launched it in 2020, in September
Perfect timing.
2020, which, no, which wasn't the best time to do anything, of course. But we actually had it all
Not
ready.
that
We
we
thought,
knew
yeah,
at the time, because in September 2020, nobody had a clue about what was coming. So obviously, you launched it with all the right intentions.
yeah, exactly. I mean, and we thought, okay, we're ready to go. Let's just go anyway and see what the response is.
Yeah.
And, we were very encouraged because I think we did feel a little niche in the market. There wasn't anything of that kind that had been designed specifically for language teaching operations. So, we were the first people to do that. And I think lots of people thought, yeah, it is a good idea. And it's about time we did take this seriously. So the initial response was really encouraging.
Okay, so you're talking about a few points over here which I want to hone in on. And first of all, let us start with the reason why. I mean, why would a school want to have this accreditation?
Well, I think there are various reasons. First and foremost, I think we are all aware of the situation in the world, the fact that our planet is facing environmental disaster on all sorts of fronts, and that we need to do something about it. And that means we all need to do something about it. We can't just leave it, to the politicians or to the geopolitical and decision makers. We all need to get involved. And that includes obviously our industry. But I think, apart from, feeling positive about doing something for the planet, there are other potential benefits for schools. So because everyone is aware of the fact that, we all need to do something, it does have, I think, real marketing value to have a serious accreditation for your school that demonstrates that you are taking environmental sustainability seriously. And I should emphasize the fact that we are doing this seriously. Our accreditation system is very rigorous. We're not into greenwashing, so you actually have to earn our accreditation, and it's not that easy.
And
The
that
other
was going to be
benefits,
my
of course,
next question. But carry
yeah.
on, carry on, carry on with why should schools get this?
Yeah, and I was going to say that apart from, the fact that they're doing something good for the planet and it has real marketing value, I think it also should, make the staff of the school feel better that the owners, the managers are taking these sorts of issues seriously and they're adopting these values in addition to their normal operation policies and practices.
And definitely, you've mentioned one very important thing here, and that is that nowadays students ask for these things. Students want to make a difference, and choosing to go to a school that is, that takes sustainability measures is something that is going to make the school more marketable and more attractive to the students. But moving on to the accreditation side of things, and you mentioned how rigorous it is. Can you perhaps walk us through it a little bit? What are the steps that a school needs to follow in order to gain this accreditation?
Sure. Well, essentially, there are three steps. The first one is very simple, very quick. You just go to our website and register, and that gives you access to our platform. And then you go onto the platform, and there are two application forms. The first one, again, is very straightforward, very quick and simple. We're just asking for essential information about the school, who we should contact, that sort of thing. So that's all very simple. The second stage of the application is, however, rather more complicated and will involve some time and effort. This essentially is what we describe as a self-assessment of the school's current policies and practices, and it includes 50 yes/no questions that cover absolutely everything the school does that will have any environmental impact at all. So there are questions about, for example, the school's energy consumption, about their purchasing policies, about their use of paper, about their recycling policies. As I say,
Okay.
everything that we can think of that has some impact. And essentially, the process is as follows. A school goes through the form, and every time they answer yes to any of the questions, they then have to provide some sort of evidence that demonstrates that they're doing what they say they're doing. And in other words, they have to upload either perhaps a document or a policy statement or a link to their website or a photo. The sort of evidence will depend on the question. So, for example, if we say one of the questions on the energy section is, does your electricity provider provide a certain amount of its energy from renewable resources? If the answer to that is yes, then we would expect to have a link to the energy provider, perhaps with a copy of the last energy bill, so we can just verify that the school is doing what they say they're doing. So, our original thinking was that we don't want to send inspectors around the world. That's for two reasons. One is because obviously that would increase the costs of the whole operation, and we're very keen to keep the costs as low as possible. And secondly, because obviously sending inspectors around the world is going to generate its own carbon footprint, which is what
Exactly.
goes against what we're all aiming to achieve. So,
Exactly, is not environmentally friendly in itself. You
yeah.
mentioned cost, Jonathan, and obviously I know that being accredited is something that schools want to do. Schools are very much interested in getting accreditations from various sources. How expensive is it for a school to get this Green Standard Schools accreditation?
Yeah. Well, I should first point out that the application process has no cost whatsoever. So in other words, schools can go through the process, apply for accreditation, and we charge nothing. So essentially what we're doing is giving schools a free environmental audit. And we do that because we think it's an important part of the process. And schools that are able to demonstrate that they are eligible for accreditation and are then invited to join our association will be asked to pay a modest fee. That depends on the size of the school,
Okay.
its turnover. But a small school therefore would be asked to pay around 400 euros, a very large school maximum of 800 euros
Okay.
per
Okay.
year. Per year. But we've also managed to negotiate a number of cooperation agreements with quite a few national associations of language schools and indeed some international language associations, which automatically gives the schools that are members of those associations a 25% discount on our fees. That's
Okay.
basically so that they help us promote what we're doing with their members.
Okay.
So effectively, for most schools, it's going to be more like between 300 and 600 euros per year, depending on the size of the school, as I say.
Okay, okay. And do they get a badge? Do they get, a banner or a logo that they can use on the website? Like, so basically, my question is, how can the school then promote itself? How can the school show to the people out there that they really are Green
Yeah.
Standard accredited?
Okay, well, obviously the schools that are accredited will appear on our website. We have a list of our accredited members on there, and we mention them in social media posts and so on. In addition, we issue the schools with an accreditation certificate, which they can put on their social media, or they can, put a copy in their reception if they want to. And obviously, we are also able to provide them with a copy of our logo as an accredited centre, which they can then again use on their website and social media. So there are plenty of opportunities for them to promote the fact that they have become accredited.
Because obviously, I'm asking this because at the beginning we were saying, and rightly so, that having this certificate is something that is going to make the school more marketable because people out there want to
Yeah,
go to schools, who are green. So obviously, it's interesting to know how the schools can promote themselves, and
of
what
course,
they can use in order
of course.
to promote themselves. Moving on to perhaps something not different, I mean, it's still related, but can you share with us perhaps some examples of some schools, and what they do in order to be greener, in order to be more environmentally friendly?
Yeah, well, lots of schools are doing lots of things. But as I mentioned earlier, um, to achieve accreditation, schools have to demonstrate that they're doing something serious across a whole range of different activities. It's not enough for a school to say, yeah, we're recycling all the stuff that we can recycle. I mean, that's great, but it's not enough. They've got to demonstrate they're doing it in all sorts of different areas. So, and as I said before, it can involve various different areas, like things like the consumption policies of the school, how they're trying to lower their energy consumption, how they're trying to lower their water consumption, how they're trying to lower the use of paper in the school, how they're trying to lower the amount of materials that they're recycling, because of course recycling is great. It's better than just dumping stuff. But of course, the whole process of recycling also uses lots of energy and water and so on. So if you can reduce the amount of waste that you need to recycle, that's even better. And then, one of the other things that we're very keen on is trying to get schools to integrate environmental issues more frequently into their classes, because we believe that, schools can do this while achieving the same language learning outcomes. But instead of maybe just, focusing on, I don't know, typical things like, where did you go on a holiday last year? It could be, where did you go on holiday and did you consider the environmental impact of your holiday? In other words, there's lots of ways that you can achieve the same language learning aims, but by focusing a little bit on environmental issues. And given the fact that the industry is literally dealing with millions and millions of students every year, our thinking is that if we can persuade even a small proportion of these students to reflect a little bit more on the environmental impact of their behavior, then, globally we can have quite an impact.
Okay. And you're reminding me of another point that I wanted to ask you. So, out of these 50, if I'm not mistaken, criteria that you mentioned in your application form, if let's say there
Yeah.
is a school who doesn't meet all of those criteria, and who perhaps needs some help or some tips on how to, for example, introduce, sustainability into the classroom?
Sure.
Or do you provide this kind of help to schools?
Yeah. Yeah, as I say, essentially what we're offering is a free environmental audit. So we would encourage schools to go through the self-assessment form, take it seriously, answer the question seriously, upload whatever evidence they have to demonstrate what they're doing. Then our assessors, once they've submitted that document, our assessors will then work through it and award points, both for the answers that the schools have given and for the evidence they've provided. So the evidence really is crucial because we need to be able to verify, as I say, what schools are doing. The maximum number of points available in our system is 200. And we've decided that schools need to achieve a minimum of 130 points
Okay.
in order to be eligible for accreditation, which
Okay.
means you don't have to be perfect because no school is perfect, but you do say you have to demonstrate that you're doing this seriously across a range of different issues. Now, I should also perhaps point out that a majority of the schools that have applied for accreditation don't make it at the first attempt.
I was going
Perhaps
to
there's,
ask you that, in fact.
yeah, but we do give them feedback on how they're doing. So we'll tell them, yeah, you're doing well in this section, this section, this section, but maybe you consider how you can improve your performance in these other areas. So we give them this detailed feedback on every question, free of charge. And then the idea is if they don't make the minimum score we require at the first attempt, the idea is they then go away, make some changes, and then when they can demonstrate that they've implemented those changes, they can reapply and hopefully, achieve the minimum score at the second attempt.
And like you said earlier on, the application process is free of charge. So schools only pay once they pass the accreditation process and they are about to receive the certificate, right?
Yeah, and obviously it's up to them then. If they achieve the minimum score, it's up to them. If they decide that they want to become members, there's no obligation
Exactly.
involved. So
Exactly.
it's no risk of any kind. The only thing that they will have to do is find the time to complete the application form seriously. And as I say, that's going to take probably 4 or 5 hours minimum to go through the form and upload the evidence and so on. But yeah, the good news is that once you've done it once, you don't necessarily have to invest that sort of time a second or third time, because although we will ask schools to resubmit their self-assessment every year, obviously, they don't have to start from scratch. They can just look at the previous form and make any changes that they've made and update it. But it's like it should be much quicker and simpler the second time around.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. That sounds pretty straightforward. And from my side, I have asked all of the questions that I had prepared and a few that came up as we went along. From your side, Jonathan, is there anything that you would like to add that perhaps we haven't tackled, that I haven't tackled through my questions?
Well, I think we've touched on most issues, but I think I'd just like to point out that we're not suggesting that students are going to choose one school simply because they have achieved Green Star Schools accreditation. But we do believe that it's going to become more and more of a factor in the decision-making process. In other words, if a school, let's just say, for example, a student has decided they want to go and take an English course in Dublin or somewhere like that. They've got a short list of 3 or 4 schools which sort of operate in a similar way, similar courses, similar prices. But one school has taken the steps to become environmentally sustainable and can demonstrate that through their accreditation. That might be enough to persuade students to decide in one way or another. And the only other point I'd like to mention is that we've had quite a lot of interest from agents as well, who are keen also to know
Of course.
how our system works. And that's because they are also getting inquiries from their students. Their students want to know how our industry is operating. And so the agencies are picking up on that.
Exactly. And not to mention that, and I think this is something that is very important for me, even personally, it's not always about what am I going to get back out of something. I think it's also about the fact that we all speak of how important it is to do something for the planet and how frustrated sometimes we all get about how things are, everything is becoming nuts nowadays. Things
Yeah,
are really deteriorating. I mean, I don't like to use the word, but it is the truth. So instead of just talking about it, perhaps this is our chance and this is our way of being proactive and actually doing something about it. So whilst I totally agree with you that it could be a determining factor for students as to which school they go to, and I totally agree with you that the more time passes, the more this is going to become an issue and the more important this is going to become when students are taking the decision as to where they are going to study. I think we also need to look at it, and schools also need to look at it as a small investment in giving something back to the planet. So
sure. And
it's
I think,
it's also
yeah, I mean, obviously, we all know that the situation is going from bad to worse. And in, 2003, all sorts of dreadful records were broken in terms of, like the global temperatures, the amount of sea ice was melting, and of course, that's not even thinking about all of the pollution that's happening around the world in all sorts of ways. So, a lot needs to be done. And one of my favorite quotes is that, yeah, the greatest danger to the planet is the assumption that someone else is going to fix
it's
it.
going to do it. Yes.
We all have to get on board. We all have to try and do what we can. And yeah, this is my little personal crusade to try and get the language teaching industry to take it seriously as well and get on board. And it could be a benefit to schools as well. I mean, so our argument is that schools that do get on board will be doing their bit to help the planet, and also they could be helping their business at the same
Exactly.
time. So it's
Exactly.
like
And
it's,
I know
you
for
know,
a fact, and I really feel I should add this from schools who are members of schools and agents and also members of your association. I'm thinking two in particular are coming to mind at the moment, that these people don't only do it, to get an an extra feather in their cap. Don't only do it to have something else that makes their schools more marketable. They do it because they truly care about the planet and because they truly, I mean, I was one of the schools that comes to mind is French in Normandy. Another school
yeah,
that comes to mind is Scuola Leonardo da Vinci in Italy.
yeah,
So these are two examples of schools, and I know because they also send a lot of content to us about what they do to make their schools more sustainable. I remember a particular lesson where Scuola Leonardo da Vinci took their students outside of the classroom. They went to help on a market. So they are practicing the language essentially because they're speaking to
yeah,
locals, but they're also doing something where at the end of the lesson, they collected the additional fruit that would have otherwise gone to waste and they gave it out and distributed it to the poor. I mean, what a nice thing that is. French in
yeah,
Normandy has recently done a big renovation in their school. We recently published an article about it. They're more sustainable than ever. I mean, sustainability is something that's very high on their agenda. So,
yeah.
there are
And,
people out there who are trying to make a difference.
that's right. And the great thing is, of course, we can all learn from each other. I mean, lots of people out there have got some really good ideas, and the whole point is to try and spread these ideas through the association, through organisations like schools and agents, to make sure that people are aware of the fact that they
Exactly.
can make a difference.
Exactly. And this is also us doing our bit. So I was talking about it recently in one of our bulletins where Schools and Agents has, as of 2024, launched a Sustainable Wednesday column, which we are writing, obviously, thanks to tips provided by you guys at Green Standard School. So it's a collaboration, which I'm very, very proud of. And it is a column where every Wednesday, we are handing out tips to schools in order to help them become more sustainable. In some cases, they are small things, that they can start doing without spending any money. And in other cases, there's a little bit of investment that is required. But like we said, everyone can
Yeah,
do it at their own pace. This is not a race. Nobody has to take over anyone. So, but it's little steps, and it's much better to do something than to just talk about it.
Of course, and in some cases, I would argue that schools can even save money. Obviously, if they do manage to cut back on things like electricity consumption and paper consumption, that can actually be benefiting them financially as well.
Exactly. And sometimes we don't realize how much we are spending on things because it's a habit. It's a habit for us to print paper. It's a habit for us, to give photocopies to our students because we're used to doing that. And because perhaps if we don't do that, then our teachers will complain because they have to learn all sorts of new methods. So it's a mental change that needs to occur. And like you're saying, at the end of the day, schools can end up saving money, which is a win-win.
Yeah, I mean, there may be other areas where they need to think about spending a little bit of money, and obviously the big one, is the whole travel issue. This is obviously a lot of schools are importing students from around the world to study
Yeah,
with them.
yeah.
That has a real impact in terms of the carbon footprint generated by the flights. And schools need to at least be aware of the footprint that they're generating, and maybe start to think about how they could do something about it. But then again, we're not suggesting schools have to offset all of the carbon emitted by their students, but at least be aware of it and think about what they can maybe start to do to try and offset some of it, and maybe again even involve their students. One of our suggestions is that on a school application form, they add an extra line saying, would you like to contribute €10, £10, $10, whatever it is, towards the cost of offsetting the carbon generated by your flight? Some students undoubtedly will say yes to that, which again helps school provide a little bit of extra cash for
Exactly.
schools to embark on some sort of really interesting offsetting program, which again they can then talk about on their social media posts.
And I mean, flights, airlines already do this. So when you are
Yeah,
booking flights, you already get
that's right.
asked this question. When you are booking accommodation on certain platforms, you already get asked this question. So yeah, why shouldn't schools do it as well?
Yeah, and you can make it optional. There is not an obligatory charge, so you're not necessarily, putting yourself in a less competitive position. You're just saying, would you like to? And then, even if students say no, at least you're communicating the fact that you, as an organisation, are
Exactly.
aware of these issues and trying to do something about it.
Exactly. Exactly. Time flies, and I think we can go on talking about this forever because it is such an interesting topic and there is so much to talk about. But, Jonathan, if you are happy to be back on this live broadcast, I'm very happy to continue this conversation with you, perhaps in a couple of months, where we can, assess the situation, maybe look at some of your member schools, what they are doing, and perhaps we can delve a little bit deeper into this topic. But from my side, I really want to help you guys and continue to raise awareness about this because this is also a topic that I personally feel very strongly about and I think is absolutely necessary. So hats off to you for this little crusade of yours, to use your words.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your support. We really appreciate it. And of course, yeah, I'd be very happy to come back and talk to you at any time.
Very well. So from our side, for all those of us, for all of you, my gosh, it's 5:30 in the afternoon. For all those who are watching this live broadcast, you can go back to our social media channels to revisit the chat that Jonathan and I have had. So this will remain on our social media channels. And I will also publish an article about this tomorrow on our website, social media. It will eventually be on our newsletter as well, in order to really, showcase this chat that we've had with Jonathan. And stay tuned because very soon you'll see another reminder to join us for this live broadcast. Jonathan, thank you once again for being with us today, and I look forward to having you again on the Schools and Agents live broadcast.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Okay.